Ah, the launch of the Nintendo Switch. Feels like it was only 5.5 years ago. This was an exciting time to be a Nintendo fan. Early 2017, right before the Nintendo Switch launched, we knew of this huge slate of games that would cover the rest of the year. You know, you have The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at the Switch's launch, then followed up with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, ARMS, Splatoon 2, then Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which actually was revealed at E3 2017 that year, but still. Fire Emblem Warriors, Super Mario Odyssey, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. There was so much to look forward to in 2017. And the Nintendo Switch's launch pretty much kicked off that year with a bombastic release of 1-2 Switch and Just Dance 2017. It's interesting to look back at the launch year of the Nintendo Switch because it was really quality over quantity, which, you know, wow. Quite a bit different from how things are these days. Back then, Nintendo kind of made up for the fact that there weren't a lot of releases on the Nintendo Switch by saying like, oh, well, we're only like accepting the highest quality games. And one of the first games on the system was this piece of shit. So obviously that was a bit of an excuse, but it did make sense at the time because the Nintendo Switch pretty much was the home to very high quality ports of indie games, either older indie games or brand new ones, and big first-party Nintendo releases, and you know, a bunch of third parties kind of testing the waters with some ports. Like Capcom did Resident Evil Revelations and Ultra Street Fighter 2. You had Lego City Undercover by Warner Brothers and a couple other Lego games here and there. Skyrim, Doom, all that kind of stuff. And it really felt like quality over quantity. And because of that, it felt like there was more oomph behind each Nintendo Switch release, you know? Like, it felt like everybody's eyes were on the next release for the Nintendo Switch, whether it was big or small, indie or AAA, AA, whatever, made by Nintendo, not made by Nintendo. It was a different feeling system back then, and a bit more of a fun time. Nowadays, it doesn't really feel like there's as much excitement around the next Nintendo Switch port, just because I feel like we're all a bit more comfortable and jaded by, you know, like, oh, being able to play these games portably and whatnot. You know, that's really still cool, and that's still a huge selling point for a lot of the games that get Nintendo Switch versions. But back then, you know, like when a game got a Nintendo Switch release, it was a big damn deal. And I just kind of want to talk about that time and kind of use this Nintendo Switch catalog as a way to kind of just map my way through the feelings of getting a Nintendo Switch in 2017 at launch, and you know, those feelings throughout that launch year. So Nintendo's main tagline during this era was switch and play, or I don't really think that was a tagline used that much. It was just what they decided to use for this exact catalog. And it shows pretty much all the different forms of play you can use with the Nintendo Switch. Handheld, tabletop, more handheld, and home console. And, you know, they're using the Joy-Con in a way that looks very much like how you would do with ARMS. And yeah, opening up Nintendo Switch, the new home video game system from Nintendo. You can tell they were traumatized by the Wii U. I want to make sure everybody knows this is the new Nintendo system. Dear God, it's the new Nintendo system. And I think they really wanted to push at that time, no, this is a home console. In reality, we know that it's just like, well, you know, obviously it's a hybrid, but I don't think Nintendo really wanted to say like, oh, well, it's both a handheld and a home console, because that would kind of undermine the fact that the Nintendo Switch was kind of supposed to be, and it still is, a home console to go. It wasn't supposed to be like a handheld that you can plug into your TV, even though that's what it is. They wanted to stress that it is a home console on the go because that really set it apart from other Nintendo systems and other handhelds, other home consoles outside of maybe the PlayStation Vita, but that was still just a handheld. And that's what they were really stressing here, because if it's just a handheld you plug into your TV, well, that just kind of undermines a lot of what makes it cool. In addition to providing single and multiplayer thrills at home, the Nintendo Switch system can be taken on the go, so players can enjoy a home console experience anytime, anywhere. Nintendo Switch combines the power of a home console with the mobility of a handheld. It's a new era in gaming that delivers entirely new ways to play wherever and whenever people want. Damn. Yeah, and I think they really did help sell that with Breath of the Wild being a launch title, being like this incredibly innovative open world experience on the go. That definitely helped sell the concept of Nintendo Switch, especially at launch. As we can see, play modes. This shows actually footage from, or a screenshot from the initial Nintendo Switch first look trailer. I remember the day that came out. I had class that day in college, and you know, woke up, you know, 9 a.m. You know, and it wasn't even like a live stream or anything. They just uploaded the YouTube video, and yeah, and then boom. It was almost surreal to see that Nintendo Switch logo and just see the name Nintendo Switch, because at the time, that felt surreal. Like, the name just didn't seem right. It was just like, what the... Because, like, everybody referred to the thing as NX, because that was the code name, and that's what Nintendo referred to it as up until that point. So it was just like this really surreal feeling. And yeah, there was so much to chew on in that trailer. It was just this idea that it's just like, not only was this a home console go, but they showed little snippets of all these games coming to it. That was the first time we saw Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 2, Mario Odyssey, Skyrim, and NBA 2K running on Nintendo Switch. Those were big deals to see those games on the Nintendo Switch, because NBA 2K only got one entry on the Wii U, and then they just kind of fell off of it. And this kind of showed like, hey, they're back. And also, you know, Skyrim, Bethesda being on board for this. The Wii U had so many problems with third-party support, especially in 2016. You know, problems with third-party support equates to none. They had the Book of Unwritten Tales. They had that, and that was about it. So it was pretty great to see third-party support, even if they were kind of like, all right, it's a sports game and a game from 2011. There's definitely stuff to criticize. It wasn't like, holy shit, but it was still pretty good to see as a Nintendo fan. It showed a lot of interest and a bright future for the platform. Play anywhere, play together. I remember specifically, like, first getting the Nintendo Switch, just like unhooking and snapping on the Joy-Cons over and over. Like, I would do that all the time. And it was almost hard to get used to, like, knowing like, oh man, there's a little button you have to push on the back to grab the Joy-Con and slide it off. It was almost hard to get used to, but now it's second nature. This is Joy-Con. One controller or two, vertical or sideways, motion controls or buttons. Joy-Con and Nintendo Switch give you the total gameplay flexibility. Yeah, so the Joy-Con were pretty much advertised and shown as pretty much the jack of all trades, the Swiss Army knife of Nintendo controllers. Now we fucking hate them, but at least back then, and still now, you know, you kind of look at them and they're incredibly versatile controllers by design. They're not perfect at all. I would even say they're not great, but you can do pretty much whatever you want with them in terms of like replicating older Nintendo systems control styles. You know, the fact that you can put both of them on their side and use them as pseudo Super Nintendo controllers, and you can also use them as Wii Remote and nunchuck replacements. You know, that is impressive, and that shows good design overall. I think the design of these are really great in terms of like flexibility and use. In terms of actual feel, like using them, and also, you know, obviously reliability, they fucking stink. And you know, they're usable, but I think overall, in terms of the blueprint design, they're great. I think they're incredibly ingenious. And of course, we can see right here, these things were jam-packed with goodies. We didn't know originally in 2016 when the Nintendo Switch was revealed how much stuff was in these controllers. We just saw that, like, you know, you hook them onto the system and you play like that. We didn't see any motion control. We didn't even see the touchscreen on the Nintendo Switch system being used. It was pretty much like you could unhook them and use them wirelessly. You could snap them into the grip. You could snap them onto the system and play like that. You could put them on the side, but that was pretty much it. But no, I mean, like, we can see, like, oh, an IR motion camera, which, thanks for making me pay for that. One of the most underutilized and frankly pretty much worthless additions to the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con. Maybe we'll see more uses for them in the future, but overall, that is one thing I don't think many people would necessarily cry about being ripped away. There are some cool uses of it. Brain Age or Brain Training on Nintendo Switch has that cool, you know, like, oh, rock, paper, scissors. Kind of like a mode where you can use the IR camera to detect what, you know, like hand motion you're doing. which was in fact something they advertised at the Nintendo Switch presentation 2017. And, you know, they've actually followed through with that. Good for them. But I don't know how expensive this thing is, and these things are already expensive enough. They were used in, like, Nintendo Labo. Why am I still paying for this? What's in the box? All right, so they had the gray Joy-Con and the red and blue Joy-Con bundle. I was really upset at myself for always getting the gray Joy-Con bundle. I got that at launch, but, you know, you easily see, you know, the red and blue one is just like, yeah, that's just cooler. I think I bought this at the time when I was kind of thinking, like, it's just like, who wants a colorful system? I want just basic ass gray. And looking back, it's just like, obviously, like, at this point, I'm like, I do like more colorful options. Like, if I can get a different color, that's more fun, that's more cool, that has more personality. You know, maybe not every different kind of color, or maybe every different kind of design is for me, but I would prefer that just because it's more interesting and it has more personality than just basic-ass gray. But I got basic-ass gray. And then the next Nintendo Switch iteration that came out, which was the better battery life model in 2019, I was like, damn, I'm gonna get the red and blue Joy-Con model. And the only one I could find was the gray one, so I bought that one again. God damn it. One thing that I think I thought was very odd, and I think some people were a bit critical of at the time, maybe even still now, I don't know, because nobody I know uses the Joy-Con grip anymore, but the Joy-Con grip that was included wasn't capable of charging the Joy-Con. You had to buy a separate accessory that was sold separately, the Joy-Con charging grip. This is just a mold of plastic that the Joy-Con can fit into. And, yeah, you know, like, I think it would have been obviously ideal if you could charge the Joy-Con via the grip. But overall, you know, like, the Joy-Con had a battery life of, like, 20 hours each. And I'm kind of like, when are you going to be playing the Nintendo Switch for 20 hours straight? The Joy-Con charge via the Nintendo Switch system, so it's literally like, if you've been playing for 20 hours straight and your Joy-Con run out of battery, just snap them onto the system and play in handheld. That might be a nuisance, but it's still like, you know, it's not like you can't play the system. But I think they did a good job of kind of consolidating everything to like, all right, this is the bare minimum of what you need. You know, you can just play Nintendo Switch with all of this, no problem. This is what you need for every single game. The Wii U definitely had the issue of like, you know, a lot of Wii U games potentially required Wii remotes and nunchucks, and they didn't include those in the Wii U box because, you know, like everybody had them from the Wii system. And that would just add to the cost of the Wii U and make it even more expensive than it already was. So I think that was just a giant mess. That's why the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con were so ingenious, because they included everything you needed just all in one controller setup. And I think that's really commendable, because that was a big issue with Wii U, was just the clutter that you needed to have that system. You know, like a sensor bar plugged in and all of that just to use the Wii Remote and nunchuck and everything. It was just like, these just made everything way simpler. They may not be as good in many ways. The Wii Remote is still more reliable in my opinion with motion control and pointer functionality, but these can at least replicate them to an extent, so, you know, whatever. And yeah, this is a silly little pamphlet that just goes a little wild with, like, how it's set up. Oh, wow. But yeah, here we have the game lineup, which is what I really want to talk about. The launch lineup, pretty much, was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That was the big game. And surprisingly launched on Wii U the exact same day. A lot of people were worried about that because Twilight Princess originally launched for the Wii and GameCube, but you know, it was originally created for the GameCube. It was originally announced for the GameCube in 2004. And with Twilight Princess, it actually launched for the Wii in November 2006. And then the GameCube version came out later in December of 2006. So if you really wanted to play Twilight Princess, you had to get a Wii. Or you could just wait a little bit, get the GameCube version a month later. And people were like, oh, why didn't they do that with Breath of the Wild? Because the Wii U performed so badly that it didn't matter at all. I think they just didn't even want to think about it. They were like, let's just put it out. Either way, people are going to want the shiny new thing. Barely anybody knows the Wii U exists, so it's barely going to cut into our sales. Just do it. And yeah, it ended up working out. You know, I think the Wii U performed so badly that, like, people would just assume like Breath of the Wild was like, oh, the new Zelda game for the new thing. Let me just go get that new thing. Yeah, Breath of the Wild on Wii U is perfectly fine. It's the same game, but you know, it's just a little like less good. It still works perfectly fine. And you know, it's still Breath of the Wild, but it does have some hiccups here and there in terms of like loading. Weirdly enough, in terms of like you like whenever you hit home and then you go back into Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, it has to load back up and you have to install a bunch of things. I think the resolution's a little lower on Wii U. Other than that, it's the same game. But overall, you know, I would prefer the Nintendo Switch version. However, you know, I did say something about loading. I do think originally the Wii U version loaded faster. But, you know, life is all about taking the pros and cons of everything. Either, you know, you load the game faster, but you have to use a Wii U to do it. 1-2 Switch was Nintendo's other retail game. A lot of people were confused as to why this wasn't a pack-in game, because it's garbage. It's something where it's just like, you know, like obviously 1-2 Switch was kind of a way to show off the Joy-Con controller, but I don't really think it was a good like pack-in game, as in like an all-encompassing like, oh, this is for everybody. Because I don't think it does a good job of showing like what the Nintendo Switch was about. I think it did a better job of like showing a thing that the Nintendo Switch can do. You know, so it was something where it's just like, hey, this is what the Joy-Con controller can do. You can do this with the Nintendo Switch. It's not just all about playing big, bombastic console games on the go. We can go back and do a lot of these casual games. But that's not the audience Nintendo was going for with the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo wanted the Nintendo Switch to appeal to everybody, but kind of reel in that hardcore gamer at first. And still, you know, like they've been doing a pretty good job of doing that consistently since then. But 1-2 Switch was just kind of to show like, hey, you know, we can do this too, and the Nintendo Switch can kind of be a continuation of what the Wii was going for. And yeah, I think 1-2 Switch is okay overall. I do think like it doesn't have enough like content. Like it has like what, like 28 or so mini games, but these are like 20 seconds each, or they're so basic that you'll play them like twice, maybe 3 times at most. And there's not enough variances on how to play them, you know? Like there's like 2 modes in the game, and there's some cool stuff in there. You know, there's that game that I think everybody can point to where you're moving the Joy-Con around and the HD rumble of the Joy-Con are kind of telling you like there are marbles in the controller and how many marbles are in the controller. That's cool, but that's something that, you know, it's just like you're done with in like a minute. I think it can be a cute game, and it can be fun with the right people. I think you can show it to some people and have a good time that first playthrough. But then after that, like, I feel like nobody wants to play it again. It loses all of the fun. There's not enough variety, both in terms of the game's content and in terms of the amount of modes and just the replayability. You know, playing through a game again, it's not going to be like, oh, this is going to be fun again, you know? Like, it's something where it's fun the first time, but then the second time, everybody's kind of like, all right, we get it. And it was $50 at launch. You know, this is something where, like, $20 downloadable, maybe. And even then, you know, like, I think that's, like, the price of, like, some Jackbox games. And those are way more replayable and gives you way more of a fun party atmosphere with friends. This is just kind of like a, oh, you're the weird kid at the party vibes. But those were Nintendo's retail games. The other titles available at launch, Super Bomberman R, it says available March 3rd, 2017. This was a game I think a lot of people picked up mainly because it was at launch. I think that shows just how good of an idea it is to be like a launch title for some of these franchises, you know, because like I don't know how well Super Bomberman R would have done on like PS4 in 2016. Just being released, just thrown out there. As a launch title for Nintendo Switch, it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of in the spotlight. People are like, oh, damn, well, I just got this new system. I really want to get more and more stuff for it. So it's just like, yeah, I'll buy this stupid-ass game. It's really cool to see Bomberman back. But I think this game was a little overall too much of like a cheap half effort. It's still Bomberman, and that's great. But overall, it felt like a lot of like, it felt like it was just lacking a lot of polish. I just remember like in terms of the animation, art design of the overall game, it just felt very cold, very basic. The cutscenes were great, like the animated cutscenes, you know, kind of the art style they show on the box, you know, that was what the cutscenes looked like. But overall, there was like a lot of stuff where it's just like, even like I remember like the character portraits in game, like they cut off. Like it wasn't even like they didn't even show like the full character portrait. They didn't even have like a box they were in to just kind of hide the fact that the character portraits were cut off. And then enemies would die and they would just pop out of existence. It wouldn't even be like a dust cloud would come out to pop them out. It was just kind of like an unpolished feeling game. Still fine enough, you know, it was still Bomberman. It was cool to see him back. And overall, they did actually support the game quite a bit through free updates and DLC. So that was kind of the epitome of like a 6 out of 10 third-party game. Pretty much every launch has those games where it's just like, it's a launch, so it's just like you get a game like this that you buy because it's at launch, and then you're kind of like, well, it's fun to use my new console. So, you know, cool that it's here, and I'm not necessarily like upset that I bought it, but still, it's not one that you necessarily have great memories of. Just Dance 2017, on the other hand, go fuck yourself, Breath of the Wild. That was kind of like the obligatory, like, oh yeah, well, it has to release, it's Just Dance. It was like, alright, sure. But then the other game that released at launch was Skylanders Imaginators. I don't even think they mentioned it in this book. Yeah, that was kind of like one of the last major like Skylanders releases, was Imaginators on Switch. Imaginators was like the last Skylanders game, at least for the time being, in 2016. And they released it for Nintendo Switch in 2017. And that was an interesting one because it didn't come with a portal like all the other Skylanders games did. They just straight up used the NFC of the Joy-Con or the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which was something that I really wanted to see them do with like the Wii U versions of Skylanders. You know, Skylanders Giants was announced as a launch title for the Wii U, and they announced like early on, like, yeah, this ain't using NFC on the Wii U, because they had it built into the controller, but they were like, nah, you still have to use this big ass portal. And I thought like that was dumb as hell. Why don't they use it? And they finally did that with Nintendo Switch. And then I realized why they didn't do it with the Wii U. It's way more clunky. It's not nearly as fun to scan your Skylanders in with like the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. You know, it's way easier to just have the portal there and just smack the figure on there and just leave it there. With like the Nintendo Switch version, like you have to go into a bunch of menus to do it. It's way more clunky, not nearly as fun. It's something where it does work better for handheld play and portable play and all of that, but overall, like, it was just like, f*** off. But those were the big retail releases. Outside of those, there were a couple other. A little game called None. Yeah, only 5 games. That was pretty shocking, but overall Nintendo had more of a strategy where obviously Breath of the Wild was kind of the big game that would have just like everybody was like, yeah, I'm just gonna be playing this. Either way, that game kind of held everybody over for a couple weeks anyway, so kind of like putting like as many games out on launch day as they did with the Wii U or original Wii. Because they had like 20, 30 something games available at launch for both of those systems. And because of that, it's kind of like, well, either way, like a lot of people just bought Mario or Zelda on those systems at launch, so it didn't even really matter. I think kind of going for a quality over quantity approach definitely kind of helped for a lot of people to try new things on Nintendo Switch. You know, you were kind of forced to. And I think that kind of helped with how the Nintendo Switch is now, because it kind of feels like every game has a great shot on the Switch. Every series that may not have done well in the past is actually doing way better on Switch than it ever did before, because I think people who own the system have been trained to just try new things, which is really damn cool. Especially when it came to Breath of the Wild. You know, a lot of people, including myself, didn't really get into Zelda as much as they wanted to back before this game. This game kind of helped to push us in that direction of like, well, damn, I'm gonna try new, like, other Zelda games. And I have since then. I've tried numerous, and I've beaten numerous, and it's such a good feeling to actually be into a series that I've always wanted to be into, and Breath of the Wild helped me with that, and the Nintendo Switch kind of pushed me in the direction of wanting to try new things. And I think this launch being a little more limited than usual really helped with that, and I actually kind of prefer that now. You know, there were like 30 damn games on the Wii U at launch. I mean, like, it's just, like, who played Funky Barn? But there were some downloadable titles, and these were also great to see. Shovel Knight was on the Nintendo Switch at launch, including like a DLC, I think Spectre of Torment. That was available at on Switch before any other platform. You had Snipper Clips, which, like, my god. Talk about like a game that I wish more people talked about. This game was so damn good, and it was published by Nintendo, developed by SFB Games, which I really hope Nintendo works with them in the future, because this game was so cool. It was so special and creative. Just the fact that, you know, you were paper and you had to cut each other up to just kind of like solve puzzles and, you know, form different shapes to just kind of like, you know, just get through environments or carries things or just get to a goal, whatever. It was so cool, and I loved it so much. I hope there's a sequel, and I hope that Nintendo works with its developer in the future, and I really hope Nintendo does more stuff like this. There was also Fast RMX, which was kind of an enhanced port of Fast Racing Neo from the Wii U. I remember being confused at the time, like if it was like, is this like a new game or like an enhanced port or a sequel or what is it? And it's pretty much just Fast Racing Neo from the Wii U, but just kind of upgraded a little bit for the Nintendo Switch at launch. But I think a lot of people were a little confused by that, and especially me. But now we know. I think there was like I Am Setsuna, and there might have been like one or two others there. I mainly got Snipper Clips and Fast RMX. I think I got Shovel Knight a little later down the line, and then like a couple days later, they had like Blaster Master Zero and the Binding of Isaac Afterbirth, which was like one of the first major retail releases outside of the launch titles. And yeah, only like a month later, we got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and then after that, we got ARMS, Splatoon 2. It was a fun time, mainly because like we were always kind of looking forward to the next thing, and you know, like it felt like the year was kind of like mapped out based on the first party Nintendo releases coming out each month, basically. I mean, they were pretty much doing a new game every month from Nintendo. But, you know, while we were waiting for those, kind of the indie titles and the third-party releases kind of helped, like, with us waiting, where it's just like, while we wait for that, it's just like, oh, damn, that piece of shit. And yeah, everything just was really exciting. It felt like, you know, when we got this console, it felt like it had a lot of potential. And in some regards, like, it definitely followed through with that. And others, you know, like, it's something where it's just like, it does feel like Nintendo's kind of like a little high on success sometimes, and it feels like they're like, fuck you, we're Nintendo. But to be fair, they've always been like that. Even during their lowest points, they usually like going, fuck you, we're Nintendo. But still, it's always fun to look back at the launch of a system and just remember the memories. There's something special about it, you know, like, it's just like, you kind of appreciate every little thing about the system at launch. And now, especially with the Nintendo Switch, it's easy for loads of games to just slip through the cracks and to forget about releases coming out or just not care about releases coming out. Back in 2017, you know, like, I gave a shit about Fire Emblem Warriors coming out. So much has changed in 5 years.